Hey guys, how's it been? Hi. Welcome to another episode of This Week in Acting. Man, I'm excited. I am really late on this is for last week. I'll be doing another one Sunday when I have the time, which I think I will, so let's jump in. Last week was fun. Last week was incredible. I booked something. I can't talk about it, sadly. But when that thing comes out, I will be happy to talk about it. But until then, I'm trying to think of ways I can talk about it without actually saying it. I think it's fascinating. When we get to these specific places where we see a lot of people doing the things that we want to do, it's amazing in the sense that, or rather it's not amazing, because when you're at that level, especially at levels of people who have been doing this for a long time, it's a job ultimately, you know what I mean? Especially being an actor, we have this mysticism surrounding it. We have this oh my God, it's glamour, it's this, it's da 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 da, and it's those things are so tertiary, so secondary, just way along down the totem pole of what you're actually doing. You know what I mean? When you get up to that point, obviously that's part of the experience, but that's not the reason we are doing these things. You know what I mean? Sure, some people actually want those things and that's the only reason they pursue that, which is fine, that's their bag. But, you can't practice being a famous actor by being famous, you know what I mean? In the sense of you see people on Instagram just posting all these great, look how cool my life is, etc. Playing up their highlight reel without working on their back, behind the scenes, and I think that's something that plagues us so much in terms of thinking about this work, that, we think about the pretty, the glamour, and, all the positives, which to some degree it is part of the experience, but that's not how we get to the places we want to be. Luck aside, some people book their first gig and magically it happens, whatever. But for the most part, you have to work. You have to actively work on the things that you want to be known for or to work at or whatever. But, you have to just keep going. And, to have such attachment to this work in the sense of making it into this legendary epic, Lord of the Rings style thing, is just something that I think we as a society do way too much. We pedestalize literally everything about this craft, and it's just it's like plumbing. You learn a bunch of skills, you use those skills, and you just get better at doing that one specific skill. For us it's memorization, tapping into an emotionality to express a story in such a way where it looks believable to the audience, which is ultimately what we do. We tell stories. We are storytellers, and we are gears in, we are cogs in a machine that is film or theater or television. That's literally our function as an actor, and there's artistry that revolves into that. But I think this hoity-toity, snooty way of thinking about it just is detrimental to us ultimately as people trying to make this a career. So I think the sooner we ground ourselves in a tangible reality and demystify the piss out of the entire thing, the sooner we're gonna have happier lives, because we're not in this heightened state of excitement and constant fight or flight of what will happen if I get this? Oh, your life changes. It's yeah, to some degree it will if you book that one big gig that will shoot you off in the stratosphere, fair enough. But, that's all circumstantial. You're still going to be the same person. You're going to still be the same person who was going to class memorizing lines as you were the person who booked the big feature film with, Christian Bale or whoever. You know what I mean? You're still the same person. You're doing the same work. Just in a different socially acceptable platform, if that makes sense. You know, one is socially seen higher than the other. You know what I mean? But I mean, it's the same work. Both have the exact same amount of value. And you know, that's why, like, especially this mentality of thinking like, you know, you go to this like slummy improv show and like that's like 20 minutes away. It's like 11 p.m. You know, there's going to be like 2 people in the audience versus, you know, performing on, say, and just using the realm of improv as an example, you know, performing on the main stage at Second City where literally all these agents, managers, and your parents who you've always wanted to please, and they're finally going to see you in your element and they're going to be so blown away, etc. Like, why do those have to be seen as 2 different things? Why can't you just treat the work as it is, as the work? You get on stage, you get on these boards, and you just do your thing. You play, you exist, you become alive, you know, and you really truly allow yourself to play, experience whatever it is that's happening, regardless of context, you know? And I think, and at least for me personally, like, when you approach that stuff with that mentality, like, you start to treat work as it is, just work, as play. And I don't use work as in a sense of like this effortful kind of like, fuck, oh, I don't want to be here today. Because you will have those days, but ultimately you're finding ways when all those circumstances or whatever things that you're dealing with in your life just kind of build up and you just hate everything and you don't want to be there or whatever. Like, you're finding ways to play regardless of whatever it is you're going through, you know? And I think, you know, when we enter that mindset, when we enter that perspective of like seeing things as they are and treating them as something that's normal, not something that excites us, not something that we're afraid of, you know, but we see, you know, it's like, you know, seeing this as just a book, not something like the very first Bible that was ever created in the history of the world that will change, you know, Agrabah. I don't know why Agrabah came into my head, but, you know, like, just seeing this for as it is. It's just a book. You know, this is reality. You know, it is what it is. You know, it's nothing more, it's nothing less. It just is. You know, and, you know, I think in this age of social media and stuff, like, only the things that are glamorized, that are I'm going to make up a word, extremanized, are really given credit. And I think to have those things, like, you know, from a comedic standpoint, it's good to kind of play with those and twist those around, but like, for that to become the established norm, and for that not to be treated as just this kind of superfluously heightened thing, doesn't make sense to me. You know, like, you know, there's so much good and amazing, great things that come from just seeing things as they are and just accepting things as they are. And I think when we start treating those things like that, like, our work is just gonna explode because then we can actually work. We're not worried about judgment or that perspective that sees something bigger or smaller than it is, because then we're just in like this egocentric place of like determining other things' value based off our perspective, rather than just seeing things as they are and then playing with those realities as they are. Yeah, so like, if I'm in a scene and, you know, my partner's doing something, or my cast member's doing something, if I enter this kind of judgmental zone of like, well, why did they do that? Why are they doing that? They're doing that thing again. Oh, fuck. You know, you're stupid. Why are you doing? You know, then you're actually, you know, if this is the story and here's you get out of the story and you start to go into this place that's not in line with whatever's happening in the story. You're actually going in, you're stepping outside of whatever is actually happening and getting into this state that's all about you and your ego and you judging the story versus being in the story, you know? So like, the sooner we see things as they are, if I see my partner doing that, then that's part of the story. Then that is actually part of what is happening in the now, in the present, and I deal with that as the character in the story, which is, I think, so much better than stepping outside that. Yeah, maybe it's scarier, maybe it's something that's going to be jarring or weird, but it's part of what's happening, and I think that's the kind of excitement and the electricity that we get to play with as actors, you know. So it's super fun and exciting. One thing I will say about that whole experience, in terms of auditioning, I I definitely got really, really nervous, you know, before going in, and it was just one of those things where I've always been nervous, you know, and like, you know, it's a given, like you know, you really want this gig, you really want this to happen or whatever, but it's something I don't know, it's something you can't control ultimately. And it's like, if it's something you can't control, obviously there's nothing you can do about it, so there's no reason to worry about it. But for some reason, like, and it's like, I started thinking to myself, all right, I'm nervous, but then it's like, but this is what I do like every other week or so. Like, you know, every week I get to go be up for these amazing projects, and I get to work on these things that, you know, I just feel like I'm getting better at, and really start to like really chip away at, you know, these stories and like parts of myself that I'd never seen before, and keep working at these different things and acting. And, you know, if this is what I want to do as a career, why do I feel the need to be nervous? And also, and this kind of comes back to a more meditative thing, who is nervous? You know, is it me in the moment that's nervous? Or is it a past version of myself that didn't think it was worthy enough to even be up for this part that's nervous? And I don't know what it was, but like I started stepping back and away from that nervous feeling, and started seeing it as somebody else and treating it as such. And when I started thinking of it that way, it just started to dissipate. And it was like, you know, I was the space that was looking at that nervous sensation. I wasn't the actual nervous sensation, which is, I think, from what we're experiencing, was massive. Like, it just like disassociated so hard from that nervous feeling, and it just disappeared, which I thought was so beautiful and just so great, because I didn't have to buy into that nervousness anymore. I didn't have to buy into nervous Zach. I became present Zach. I became a guy going in for an audition, you know, that he goes out constantly on, you know, maybe that reality isn't true, but it also can be. But even then, like, you know, taking that joke into perspective, like, why am I downplaying the fact that maybe I do, and I'm getting into these rooms and auditioning for great projects? Like, why do I have to dismiss that? Is that because I want to try to hold myself down and try to hold, trying to keep alive this old part of myself that wants to be seen just by like downplaying myself? And honestly, like, and you know, in danger of sounding egotistical, like, I don't want to be that low person anymore. I want to be the guy who's going out multiple times a week, who's going out like booking these projects and being really fun to work with, and like, you know, being the person who I want to be, being at the level that I want to play at, you know, and not feeling the need to kind of, you know, play at the smaller version of myself. Not to say I don't want to be humble, you know, absolutely, you know, I'm so grateful and excited to be a part of everything, you know what I mean? But I don't see the need to really buy into these old mentalities of like, well, that's stupid, I'm not enough, and like kind of joke that away. And it's like, yeah, the comedy that comes from there is fun and fine when you want to play with those perspectives as an improviser comedian, but I don't want to be a part of those mentalities that don't serve me anymore, you know? And I think, you know, there's so many people who think they need to buy into those in order to be accepted, that they make that who they are, as opposed to become who they can be and get on the way to that, and really let go of all these things, possibly people that hold you down and back from becoming that thing that you really want to become, you know? And I think that's a really massive shift that I started learning in the past couple of weeks, was just, you know, not having to buy into that old version of myself, and trusting that this new version of myself is going to get everything that I want. You know what I mean? Because at that point, making that thing that I want and I'm excited about normal is going to draw all that stuff that I want to me because I'm playing from that level already. In my mind, I've already gotten that thing. In my mind, I've already booked that massive film with my favorite director. In my mind, I've already booked the next Batman movie with Christopher Nolan. Yeah. So I think a lot of what we do, kind of getting into another point in a sec, is shifting our mindset slowly but surely into this mindset that allows us to become the people and performers that we want to become. You know, in class this last week, I had a very just a very difficult time with a difficult scene, and I wasn't opening up the way that I wanted to. I didn't feel connected to what was happening. I didn't feel connected to the story, to my partner. I felt in my head, blah blah. You know, I wasn't having that much fun. Like, I really wanted to be present and in what was happening in the story, and I just wasn't. And I realized it was because I was thinking about what this should be. I was thinking about I was thinking about how this should go, what this should be, how should it look like. I need to do this, and like coming from a place of more hitting waypoints, and like obviously, you know, as an actor, you want to hit your blocking and you want to hit specific things for camera or whatever. But I felt like I was constantly thinking my way into a scene, which if you haven't had this revelation yet, it's like, especially when you're cerebralizing your moment before, or just like coming from a place of like an intellectual understanding of what's happening, you're not going to be really creating and playing from an emotional standpoint. You're going to be creating from a cerebral standpoint. You're going to be creating from playing an idea of, which can be fun sometimes, but especially being earnest and in truth and like being really authentic in the moment, it can be really difficult playing the idea of something because you're only going to be connected in a cerebral sense, or an idea of how something should go or should be, or you're essentially going to be shooting all over your scene. So when you back away from getting into an idea of something and you start to really earnestly connect from your heart, meaning like you're actually doing something in the moment, you're actually asking how this person's doing, you're actually asking them, you're actually desiring something from them, not in a oh well, I'm just gonna see what happens or whatever. Like, you're literally actually doing that, you know, which feels really scary, but you're gonna start to feel like this whole authenticity shift, and you're not gonna know what's happening because, and I think that's the thing, like when you know what's going to happen, you're already in your head because you know what the end result's going to be. When you're not in your head and you're in like your body, you're in like an emotional choice, something that hooks into you emotionally, you're not going to know what's going to happen in the end. Like, maybe you have an idea or whatever, but like you're essentially like signing up for this roller coaster ride that you've never been on before every single time. You know, at least that's what we're trying to convey and try to be believable, etc. But you know, when we're hooking into that, you know, we can't have these expectations. We can't have this thing of like, well, I need to do this, X, Y, and Z. Even though there are going to be moments, especially in camera work, where you're like, I need to do this, I need to do that, I need to do this, I need to do that, for camera, for storytelling, etc. But when we come from a cerebral place, if those moments aren't rooted in some type of emotional truth, then it's going to become stilted and crappy and sticky and predictable and not really fun to watch as an audience member, and to some degree not really fun to do as an actor. You know, a great quote that I heard today from my teacher was, it'll come to me. It's coming to me. Live in the exploration, not the expectation, which I think is such a beautiful mind shift, because it's like you're living from a place of curiosity, intrigue, and like wonderment, versus like that like kind of like a very compartmentalized should way of approaching that, because it's ultimately just that exploration of trying to figure out, what is this? What am I doing? Like, what is actually happening? You're more engaged. You're present. You're curious. You're you're trying to do something versus like I call it being shiny, because there's like this aspect of like being shiny in such a sense where you're trying to go shoot for perfection. You're thinking of an idea in your head and you're trying to match that idea, rather than being present with somebody. You're putting on a show to impress versus like actually living in the circumstance of what's happening. And I've done this for years, for a long time, and like I still do it. But I'm noticing in that and trying to fall away from that even more and trying to be present and be there with my partner in whatever capacity that's needed, so I can be receptive to the story and allow that to take me wherever it needs to go. So, yeah. And I think that's all I can really think to talk about this week. So I'll see you Sunday. Hopefully that was fun. I'll talk to you soon.